Just when I think I've seen everything, something different walks in the door. And today, I've got something that I've never seen before. I even went about and tried to find it. I Googled the brand, and nothing came back. So we're going to take a look at this little old tape recorder today and try to figure out who made it. Check this one out. Today I'm starting my video with my bench relatively clear, but it's not going to stay that way for long. I have an item today that I have never seen before. I've never come across one of these things in the 35 odd years or more that I've been working on. Actually more than that, because 35 years is from when I started my professional career in electronic servicing, but I was tinkering around with electronics for many years prior to that. But I've never seen one of these units before. I even tried Googling it. I can't find any info on this thing. This thing in the tan and brown box. I haven't revealed the name of it yet. But I Googled this and I could find nothing. No data on this. Could not find even a picture of it. What is it, you ask? Is it a record player? Well, it could be. I mean, after all, a record album would fit on there quite nicely. Could be a record player, but it's not. That's a Minerva reel-to-reel. It even smells old. I just got knocked out from the smell of old electronics that just came off this thing. It's even got the manual with it. Let's see when this thing, see if we can find any info on this thing. It's a dual speed. Oh, look at that. It's even got a schematic. It's changing for the better all the time. When was this thing made? Is there any dates on this thing? I'm looking to see if I can find a production date. This thing's got to be early 50s, I'm thinking. Is there a date? A dual speed tape recorder. One thing you'll notice about this thing is it runs backwards. The tape runs from right to left. If you look here, the pinch rollers on this side. Supply reel, feed reel, take-up reel, mic jack. So unlike regular reel-to-reels which play from left to right, this one plays from right to left. Look, rewind, fast forward. And it does it just by moving the reels back and forth. I'm just looking to see if there's any info on this thing before we tear into it. And this is coming apart before I even plug it in, because there is going to be capacitors that do need to be changed on this before anything. I'm sure the belts are probably melted too if there's any belts in it, but we'll get it apart shortly here. I would just like to see if I can find a date this thing was made. But I don't see anything here, and I don't see anything on the back of this thing. See, it's even got a note here. Certain models, the C3 is 120 microfarads, in other words, picofarads, and C9 is 1000 microfarads, and R10 is 220k ohms. These models, which use a mesh magnetic head, have a bias of 25 volts instead of 10 volts shown on the schematic. But unfortunately, I don't see a date of production on this thing, which would have been nice. So here's the tape that was packed with the unit, and as you can see, it's It cost $3.56, and that would have been a hell of a lot of money back when this was new. $3.56, but this is a cellulose acetate based tape. So this was before they came out with the mylar and polyester base. They used an acetate based tape. And yeah, the tape played fine. It's got a break in it. It's been spliced and so forth. But the recording that was on here, I played it back on my Kai, and it played fine. I think what we'll start with is we'll start by removing this thing. I don't know if it comes out. The whole thing probably comes out of the cabinet, I'm thinking. There's some screws on the bottom. Yeah, there's some screws on the bottom here. So let's start by removing the bottom on this unit and get it apart and see what makes this thing tick. Get a look under the hood, or as Dave Jones would say, get a look up under its skirt. Not being politically correct there, but it's okay. A couple screws on the unit itself. Either the bottom's going to lift off, or the whole case is going to lift off, or the bottom's going to come off here. But we'll get a look in here and see what shape this thing's in. Ultimately, I would like to make this thing make some noise, and then I'll have to decide what I'm going to do with this unit. Being certainly is a collector's piece for sure, this unit. 2 speakers. Let's just unplug the wires. That's got another schematic inside. Oh! It's got a date in here. It's got a production date. Interesting. When was this thing made? 1957. I thought it was around 50s. All right, I figured it was from June 24th, 1957. There is the date that this thing was manufactured. As I say, I figured it was going to be, I figured maybe early 50s, but we're late 50s. But that's okay. It's a rare beast anyway. But the bloody belt is still good. Look, the capstan turns. It's not turning very well. It looks like this thing's going to require some heavy-duty lubrication, but it does turn. I don't know what is sticking, whether it's the capstan or I think it's the motor. The motor needs to be oiled. And here's the fast forward and rewind. You see, it's just a twisted belt, and when you pull these little levers over, you actually just put tension on this belt one way or the other. You see, it just puts tension. So that's going to work. That's going to work. That belt, it's got 2 belts. One belt that just loops straight over, and the other one you can see has got a twist in it to reverse the direction. So if I can get this motor to spin, this thing is probably going to work. I think there's a fuse that's missing in the front too. It's got 4 tubes in it. I don't anticipate any problems with the tubes, but definitely this motor is interesting. This was sold by the Eaton's Corporation, Timothy Eaton Co. That sheds some light on this as to who made it. This was probably a house brand sold by Eaton's. That's what I'm thinking. It was a house brand sold by Eaton's. We look at the tubes here. One of the tubes is actually mounted in a little support. That's so that this would be the preamp tube, so that it's physically isolated from the chassis, so that the speaker won't cause feedback, because the vibrations from the speaker into the tube could cause microphonics and cause feedback. So look what they've done. They actually isolated the tube separately on a separate insulator with rubber grommets, so that the tube itself is physically isolated from the chassis to reduce vibrations. Interesting. So first I'm going to remove the fan, as I want to see whether this bearing can get some lubricant into it. So it's a small Allen key. It's a 5/64, I believe. Yes. remove that screw. I think there's just the one, and that should be able to pull the fan off. We'll just use a flat blade screwdriver to pop it out. Okay, I just want to get some oil into this bearing here. It's moving a little better now, but I think if I can get some oil into the bearing on both sides, I may be able to free this thing up without actually having to take the whole motor apart. That's another option, right? Would be to pull the motor apart and lube it. And that would require taking this whole front mechanism apart, which I really don't want to if I don't have to, because I don't think I'm going to need to. I think I should be able to get some oil into here and get this motor freed up. I just got to get some oil into the bearing here and again on the other side, and then we'll check the capacitors on it. And it doesn't have a fuse in it, and part of the fuse holder is missing, so I may just have to put a fuse in the back here. Just disconnect this fuse holder so that there's no power on it, and just put a wire fuse in to the back. It's got a Hammond transformer, right? Hammond manufacturing. The motor was made by the Alliance Manufacturing Company. So this would have been made in Canada, this unit. For sure. For sure, made in Canada. Could have been even made at the Rogers radio plant, for that matter, or Alliance Radio. One of them made this thing for the Eaton's company. So it's very likely that this tape recorder is also available with a different brand. But as I say, when I searched Minerva reel to reel, I got nothing. The only Minerva products I found were some AM radios from the late 40s, and I think I found a record player as well. I found nothing on this particular unit. So it has to be relatively rare, I would think. So we'll see if we can get some oil to run down into the motor shaft here. Get some oil in there. See if that'll free this up at all. I don't know whether this is what's gummed up, or whether it's the... I don't think it's the capstan shaft, because I can move the capstan and it's not turning the motor. So I think this is the motor that's gummed up, and not the capstan bearing. Actually, you know what? This motor is actually starting to free up. So I may be in luck. I'm just going to try put a little more oil in here into this bearing. It's actually starting to turn quite smoothly, so I may not have to take that part apart, which is good, because I don't want to have to take these. I'm concerned about trying to pull these plastic knobs off. They could break. So if I don't have to take them apart, I'd rather not, just because I don't want to risk damaging it in any way. This is actually in quite good condition, other than the fact that the fuse holder piece is missing, which I'm sure I could get another fuse holder. This unit is actually in quite good shape. So I would like to try and preserve this as original as possible without changing anything other than the critical parts that I'll have to change, which will be any wax paper capacitors in it. But the motor's starting to free up, so I'm just going to add a little more oil to both sides of the bearing here, and we'll see whether I can actually get this thing to power up and spin without having to pull it all apart and clean it up. So I'm going to remove these 1/4 inch screws from the top, and that should lift off this top bracket, and that I should be able to get access to the other motor bearing from here. You see, there's the belts. As you can see, it's got these, it's almost like a fabric belt, and then it's got the main drive belt at the front that turns. And there's actually, I'll show you guys a close-up if you can't see this. This is how it changes the pulley. Okay, you see the hook there? Try and get a little closer up view of that thing, and we'll show you the way it changes the speed on this thing. So when the motor is running and you pull the knob, it flips the belt from one to the other. Right, now it's spinning the other way. And then when you push it in, you'll see the little claw kick back and it grabs the belt. You see that little claw there? It grabs the belt and flips it over to the other pulley. There's the 7.5 inch. And I pull and you'll see it flip the belt the other way. Neat, huh? That's how they changed the speed on this thing. 3 3/4 IPS and then 7.5. Neat. And then when you went into fast forward or rewind, you basically just tightened up one of these other two belts. There's one and the other one is on this side. And that spins the reels. And as you can see, they work. If I pull the, you see the reel turning there, and the other side, that reel turns there. That's how simple this mechanism was. I'm just using a screwdriver to transfer some oil down onto the bearing and let it work its way in. Ah, there, much better. Oh yes, yeah, that's got it much better now. So I'm able to freely move the motor shaft back and forth. Yeah, no problem now. And there's the other speed there. There, okay, now I'll put that fan back on. The fan actually is what holds the motor in place, because this motor shaft does have a fair bit of motion here. So the fan actually holds that motor in place so that it doesn't do this as it's moving. And I know I'm going to mention this now because if I don't, I'm going to get all kinds of comments from people telling me about oil, and they're going to call this stuff crap, and they're going to tell me it's no good. And so I might as well just debunk this right now. Okay, this is SAE 20 petroleum-based oil, designed for electric motors. It is a special blend, 100% pure oil, SAE 20, single weight, non-detergent oil. This is not the same SAE 20 that you would put in your lawnmower or your old car. This is specifically designed for electric motors. It is non-detergent. Engine oil, on the other hand, has detergents in it that is there for one reason: to remove combustion blow-by and to help cool a combustion engine. You don't want those additives in electric motors. You want a pure oil. There are different grades of 3-in-1 oil. There is 3-in-1 household oil, which does have rust inhibitors and all the other crap that's used in conventional engine oil. That is not the same as this. This is designed for electric motors. Now that I've said that, I don't need to hear people sounding off in the comments that I'm using the wrong oil. I've been using this stuff for 35 years. I've used it on everything. I've used this on mechanisms as delicate as mechanical clocks, and they work, and they continue to work. And if it was no good, you would see it in a clock mechanism before anything else. Something as delicate as a balance wheel clock, and I've used this stuff on it, and the stuff works fine. But this is 20 weight, which is perfectly acceptable for any bearings you're going to find in any electric motors. And that is exactly what it's designed for. Now that I've thoroughly stirred the pot and opened the hornet's nest, I'll be getting all the oil Nazis coming after me. Yeah. Okay, I was gonna have to push this thing on a little further, just so that it doesn't have quite as much play. Just gonna grab this thing with a pair of pliers, the shaft here, so that I can get the fan into position. There we go, that's a little better. Still got a little bit of play there, but not too much. Just tighten up the set screw. So you can see the fan turns nicely now. the capstan shaft turns nicely. Everything's turning nicely now, which is what we want. I think it probably turns this way. That would be the direction it turns. That way it's drawing air in and blowing air onto the motor itself to cool it down. Okay, now that I've taken care of that, we need to get into the actual amplifier. And it's got special screws on it. I wonder if I can remove them just with a regular screwdriver. Or these rivets. Oh, they're just pop rivets. They just pop out. Okay. They're just clips. Good. Excellent. Pop out the 4 clips. And the metal bottom should pop off to reveal the circuitry on the bottom that I need to address. And I'm in luck. I don't see any paper capacitors in this thing. I see lots of disc capacitors, speaker wires here. I see disc capacitors. I see a record play switch. This is how you record on this thing. Okay, you crank the knob over for playback, and if you want to go to record, you push it in, and you'll notice what happens here. Okay, to playback, you just turn the knob like that, and you notice when I push it in, there's a little lever here that moves in, and that will pick up this switch here and move that switch up like that, which moves these contacts to the record position. So here is the record play switch. Pretty simple. You see? So we're going to clean that. I just happen to have some neutral here. It's about as simple as a switch can get. That should be clean enough. This has got a electro ohm. See? Electro ohm. And they're traders. They use a capacitor made in the USA. How dare them? This one here. It's an Astron. Made in the USA. 25 volts. DC. But no pesky paper condensers in this unit. It's got that electrolytic, and it's got this multi-point or multi-value can that has 3 caps in it. But I think we're okay. We can power this thing up, and fingers crossed, it's going to work. Here's the record indicator light. It's probably a neon bulb in this thing. It is a neon bulb. You can see the two little probes here. And if I take the bulb out, here is the record over. It's an NE51. This is a neon bulb. There's no filament in here. This is going to glow orange, and it's presented with a high voltage. And this is your record indicator. This will flash when you're recording. And if it flashes too much, you're over recording. But this is an NE51. Same as an NE2 bulb, but it actually has a bayonet mount. Again, try and get one of these. Good luck. I don't think you'd ever find an NE51 bulb now, but and it's been a long time, long time since I've seen one. So we'll just put that back in here. To say the whole name of the game here is to keep this thing as stock as absolute possible. We'll give the other controls while I'm at it a shot of cleaner. So we'll clean this one here. and we'll clean the volume control as well. This is the tone control. And the other one's the volume control, which will function as a record level. Because basically all you're doing on a unit like this is changing the head to the speaker terminals, and the microphone goes into the amplifier. When you're in playback, the head is connected to where the microphone normally would be, and the speaker is connected to the output of the amplifier. When you put it into record, you are putting the head basically to the output of the amplifier and putting the microphone to the input to the preamp, which would normally be where the head would be when you're in playback mode. And that's all done by this switch. When you switch it like that, it's switching things around. It's switching the input. You can see up here, I think this is where the head plugs in, if I'm not mistaken. Or is that? Yeah, that's the head. So the head plugs in right here. So when you put it in record, it's shorting these two, or putting these two together. So it's taking, looking at the way the wires are going here. Okay, when it's in this mode here, this contact is connected to this one, and this one runs up to this probably the grid to this tube. When you put it into record, it switches it off. It switches this contact, which goes up to the head, to this one, which would come back from one of the other stages of the amplifier somewhere. The microphone is here. The microphone's connecting up to this terminal here. So when you put it in record, that's connecting that terminal to that one and feeding that off through, looks like it goes to this resistor and down to here, and from there down to here, and that'll go into the amplifier somewhere, or maybe into the level control first, and then to the amplifier anyway. Basically that's what you're doing, is you're switching the system around. You're putting the head onto the output of the amplifier on record, and you're putting it onto the input of the amplifier on playback. In case you're wondering about the speaker wires getting trapped, there is an actual cutaway for it here in the base, so that the wires themselves are not going to get pinched. So we'll button up the amplifier, and then I just gotta find a suitable fuse for this thing. I don't know what size it's supposed to be. I'm going to look at the schematic here and see what size of fuse it uses. What's crazy about this thing is that it doesn't even show the rating of a fuse, but I happen to find a fuse holder, which I can put in here. I think it's a 1 amp fuse that I've got in this thing. It's either a 1 or a 2. What is this thing? 250 volt. Anyway, it's out of my audio generator. It should do the job for this, I think. I think it'll work. Maybe it won't. It might be a different size. And I thought I was going to get lucky and find the right size fuse holder, but maybe not. I guess not. Okay, well, it was worth a try. I thought I was going to get lucky there. This is the bus fuse holder. I don't know what brand this one is, but I'll have to try and find a new fuse holder for this thing. But I want to see if it works first. So I'm going to throw caution to the wind, and I'm just going to short out the fuse and draw all kinds of hates, I'm sure. But I want to see if this thing works. And the schematic doesn't even show a fuse on it. That's the thing. I looked at the schematic to see what the fuse value is, and there is no fuse listed on the schematic. It does not show one at all. So that may have been an afterthought added to this unit for, you know, for safety or whatever. But we are connected. Power is off. Apply power to this thing. Let's see whether it turns on. That works. Shall we see if this thing plays? Get a speaker to hook up to this. See if we get any sound out of it. I'm even going to thread this tape that came with it. Don't worry, I'm not erasing anybody's family memories or anything. This tape is already been transferred over to digital, so I'm not erasing when I record on here. I'm not going to be erasing anybody's treasured memories because, as I say, it's already been dealt with. Okay, power, volume. We'll try the fast forward control first. Oh, that works. And play. I would say this thing works. I gotta make a recording on this thing. Microphone. Hello, hello. Okay. There's the microphone. So to record, we just put this thing into record and speak and see whether the light flashes. This microphone might not be working. Testing 1 2 1 2. Hello, hello. I don't see any light lighting up here on the record level control. I got the volume cranked all the way. Huh. I wonder if it's actually recording. I guess we'll find out when I play it back.
Whether the light flashes. Testing 1 2 1 2. Hello, hello. I don't see any light lighting up here on the record level control. I got the volume cranked all the way. If it's actually recording, I guess we'll find out when I play it back.
Well, I guess it was recording. We'll try that again. Record. Okay. Oh yeah, it is flashing. It's just not very bright. It's too bright in here to see. You guys can probably, I don't know if you can see it on camera or not. If it turns some of the lights out, maybe you will see that light flashing. But it is definitely blinking. I'll take this cover off here. Now you might be able to see it. Can you see the light flashing? Damn, I gotta turn the lights out in here. It's just too bright, but I can see that light flashing when I speak. Here, I'll turn the lights out. There, now you might be able to see it. There. Now you can see the light flash. Yeah, that's all it does. Just a dull orange glow because it's responding to the voltage coming off the voltage amplifier. And with this little plastic cap on here, you're supposed to be able to see it a little bit better. And actually you can. You can see it a little better now. Okay, now you guys can see it because it's got a little lens on there. So this thing's actually recording in the 7.5 speed. To switch it down, I just pull this knob up. We'll switch it to 3 3/4. And now we are on 3 3/4. And that is this little vintage tape recorder. It works. All that I had to do to this thing was lubricate a seized motor from 1957. Pretty cool. I gotta love that rewind and fast forward. That is just so cool. No brakes, you just stop it by hand.
And speak and see whether the light flashes.
Whoops.
Testing 1 2 1 2. Hello, hello. I don't see any light lighting up here on the record level control. I got the volume cranked all the way. Wonder if it's actually recording. I guess we'll find out when I play it back. Okay, oh yeah, Yeah, it is flashing. It's just not very bright. It's too bright in here to see. You guys can probably, I don't know if you can see it on camera or not. Turn some of the lights out. Maybe you will see that light flashing.
So it stays on when it's a pilot light when it's turned on.
Take the cover out here. Now you might be able to see it. Can you see the light flashing? Damn, I gotta turn the lights out here. It's just too bright, but I can see that light flashing when I speak. Here, I'll turn the lights on. There, now you might be able to see it. There. Now you can see the light flash. Yeah, that's all it does. Just a dull orange glow. Because it's responding to the voltage coming off the voltage amplifier. And with this little plastic cap on here, you're supposed to be able to see it a little bit better. And actually you can. You can see it a little better now. Okay, now you guys can see it. Because it's got a little lens on there. So this thing's actually recording in the 7.5 speed. To switch it down, I just pull this knob up. We'll switch it to 3 3/4. And now we are on 3 3/4. And that is this little vintage tape recorder. It works. All that I had to do to this thing was lubricate a seized motor from 1987.
No, it's a splice that just went through. So that's that. Now, I want to see whether this thing can record some half-decent music. So, I believe if I plug it into, that should be live all the time. That radio phono, it says. So, if I come up with an adapter, somebody's playing some loud music. If I come up with an adapter, I can probably plug this in and record some music. I like to see how this thing sounds. This microphone here is a crystal microphone, so you wouldn't expect much fidelity from that, but I'm curious as to how this thing will actually perform if I give it a real audio source. We're going to try that next. Okay, I gotta make noise over this because that music in the background is certainly going to get me hit with a copyright strike because, you know, somebody's playing their music so loud that the whole neighborhood can hear it. Anyway, I'm going to plug my royalty-free content into this radio phono input, and we'll put this into record. Of course, when I do that, it cuts off the speaker, but it should be recording what is coming off of my MP3 player now, and we'll see how the sound is. And I'm going to hook up the original speaker on this thing and just see how it sounds, because obviously the speaker I've got on there now is not the correct speaker, and it's probably not the correct impedance either for what this thing requires. But anyway, I'll record this for a couple seconds here, and we'll see whether it actually makes a recording, because I don't have any indication here that it is, other than the light does come on when I turn it up, so I think it is. So let's try this playback. Now I gotta remove that plug, otherwise we won't hear anything. Okay, that should be good.
And
so I'm thinking the microphone input probably will do the same if I plug it into here and play something. I'm just going to pick a different song. Okay, we'll go to this one and we'll put it into record. Okay, now I can see the light flashing. You can turn this down so the light's just barely modulating a bit there, and that way we aren't going to be over recording. And we'll see how it sounds. Now there is no output through the speaker when you're recording, obviously, otherwise you would get feedback. And that's why they have the radio phono input, so you can use this as an amplifier for a radio or a record player that did not have built-in amplifier. That's what that's for, just so that you can use the amplifier directly. And if I plug the microphone in there, I could probably use it as a PA amplifier, I would think. Okay. There we go. That's where I set the level so that it was just barely blinking. I would imagine if I plug the speaker in here, I can probably, yeah, see, it turns it into a PA amplifier. So, but very poor quality microphone. Let's see how the heads are. See if I can get into here. I don't even know how to open this thing up. Gotta like that speed though, man. That thing's quick. But you have to hold it. Okay, so I'm just looking at this. It's kind of neat because the output jack is actually a double output. So you can put a standard mono plug in here into the output socket, and that becomes a preamp output. And what it does is it basically shorts. It shorts the speaker to ground. It shuts off the speaker. If you put in a stereo type plug, you connect the speaker to the ring, not the tip, and leave the tip open, and it becomes speaker output. And it says, do not plug anything in if you don't have a speaker connected, because you can burn out the output transformer and burn out the tube, obviously, if there's no load. It's supposed to have a 3.2 ohm speaker, and I'm feeding it into an 8. Here, you want to hear some microphonics? That's tapping the tube. That's microphonics. That's why that tube is isolated the way it is. I'm just looking at this thing to see how to clean the heads on this thing, because I don't think this cover comes off. It looks like it should, but I can't see any way that it does come out of here. I don't want to damage anything. I think that if I pull that, there we go. Okay, there's the heads. We've got our erase head and our record play head. We're going to clean this because this thing probably has never been cleaned. Yeah, it's pretty dirty. We'll clean the pinch roller and
record and speak and
it does have a felt pad here, as you can see, that presses the tape up against the head, which is good, because there's no tension on here, but there is good torque. Copper. This thing's made out of copper. Solid copper. Wow. I think this whole chassis is probably made out of copper. Looks like it. Fast forward. Moves along pretty quick. There is a braking system on here, by the way, that slows it down. Rewind. It's just slow. Now this is a sticky shed tape. No problem with these heads. Just those damn glass heads. So I guess the next thing, I'm just going to try and get a fuse holder for this thing, and that way I can restore this thing to like new, and then see what we can do with this unit. It's kind of a neat unit, almost worth keeping something like this because of the age and the vintage of it. But if someone wants this thing bad enough, I'll let it go. Because old units like this don't come around every day. 1957, did I say? Yeah. Pretty old. It's older than me. So this being a half-track machine, this tape has some stuff recorded on it on both sides. It was recorded on a quarter-track stereo machine. This being a half-track mono, if we try to play this tape back, we'll hear both sides playing at the same time, one going forward and one going backwards. Anyway, to say it, working pretty good. I think that one of the more unique things about this is the way that the tape spools from right to left, which is something you don't see that often, is machines that spool the opposite way. Anyway, I'm going to see if I can get a fuse holder for this thing, and then we'll finish this thing up if I can get one. I may have to just make a special trip into the parts place and pick one up if they have one. It's not as easy as it looks. You gotta hook these two in, and they just sit in there just so. Like that. And then this snaps down. Like that. That's how it goes on. Okay, let's take that fuse holder out so I can go and get a new one. Once again, we'll take the top off. Just makes it easier to access it. I'm going to remove the old one because I need to see what shape it is, whether it's a round one or whether it's got one side flat. I got to basically measure the hole because they come in different sizes. So we're going to take the old one out and then go and find a new one to replace it. Pull that tube so it doesn't get damaged. Try to preserve some of the original wire so I don't have to strip it back so much. Okay, now I should be able to take out okay. So now I gotta get one of these. I'll take the old one down with me. Make sure I get the one of the right size. Yeah, okay, this is what they have. They have a flat side, but on here it's not even going into a flat side, it's going into a round hole. So, alright, down to the parts place to grab one of these. So I made a trip in to Lee's Electronics. Got the fuse holder. Whole $2.80. So I go to pay for it. I have $2.80 in exact change. And the guy won't accept my money. He says, I got to put it on debit or credit. That's all they will accept, debit or credit. And I can't accept my cash. And this is one of the things that's just starting to, it's really starting to get to me. Because last time I checked, cash was legal currency. But places are not accepting it now. Oh, this won't fit. What the heck? Doesn't look like it's the same size. The screw looks to be bigger. Great. It's a larger hole. Another time, I go in there and get that. I took this old one in too. I said, I need one of these. And he goes and hands me this. It's a slightly larger hole than is in the unit itself. Wonderful. Anyway, as I say, it's driving me crazy because you go to buy something and they won't accept cash. Looks like this has been added after the fact. This hole has been drilled. This never had a fuse in it before. Somebody added this after the fact. This hole that's drilled in here, this is not an original hole. That's been added. It's not even drilled round. I'm gonna have to work at this to get this thing to fit. It should fit, but it's certainly not going to be a nice. It's not going to be a proper fit. It's anyway. I'll work at this to get this fuse holder in. But anyway, it's just one of the things. Another thing that's just ticking me off with this whole COVID stuff is that all these businesses are using it as an excuse. They don't want to handle cash, and they make you pay with a credit card or a debit card. The problem is the bank charges you to use a debit card. Every time I use my debit card, the bank charges me 25 cents, and I'm getting nickeled and dimed to death by the bank. And that's something that's just starting to piss me off, quite frankly. Well, I got the new fuse holder and fuse in place. I had to file it a bit to make it fit and glue it in place with some JB Weld. It's ugly, but it will get the job done. So we're gonna just reconnect the wires to this, and then I'll get the back on it and see how it performs using the original speaker. And then this job will be pretty much done. And looking at this, you know, this thing never originally had a fuse, I'm sure, because it's not shown in the schematic that it had a fuse. But I think that a fuse holder was added when this thing was serviced once, because this transformer here, this Hammond transformer, does not look like an original. That looks to be much newer than 1957. So I think that this thing was repaired once, and when it was repaired, maybe the transformer had burned out, so someone put a fuse in it to protect the transformer. That's where I think the fuse came from, and that's why the hole that it was mounted in wasn't even round. Or wasn't shaped like normally they have a flat side on them. This was a round hole, like somebody drilled it with a drill, but it wasn't completely round. It was kind of oblong, and this is a separate piece. Like this front face, if I had tried to take this off, I wouldn't have been able to, because that fuse holder would be preventing me from doing it, because there's actually two pieces of metal here. So I would have had to take the fuse holder out to take the face off this thing. And that's just because somebody had added that in the past. So we'll put the new one in, hook it up, and send it on its way. Well, not send it on its way. Send it on its way back to my workshop storage unit, because I'm obviously not going to be using this thing. This is more of just a project to see whether I can make it work, which I have, and kind of restore it, and then maybe I'll put it up for sale and sell it. I don't really have a need for a vintage tape recorder of this vintage, so it may join somebody else's collection once it's all back together. Anyway, let me finish putting the fuse in, and then we will test it. Put the top cover back on. Yeah, that was a lot of work getting that fuse holder in place. And I know what the problem with it is. Metric. The original one, I'm sure, was not metric, and the one that they sold me was more than likely metric. That's probably why it didn't fit. But I basically had to sand off the threads on it so that it would fit. So I just sanded it down and stuck it in and put some JB Weld on it. Ain't looking pretty, but you know what? It's going to be functional, and at least I don't have a big hole in the front of this thing. So reconnecting the speakers, and then the cabinet goes over top of the unit like that. Okay, the unit's back together. Thread the tape through it. Oh, might help if I don't have the cord jamming my reel. I was wondering why it was slowing down there a bit, because the cord was stopping the tape. There it is. It's through the Bluetooth. I have it a little loud, too loud there. There we go. Not real high fidelity, but this tape also is this tape is also not a real good tape. It's a very old tape, but the unit's working. So I'm just making a final recording from my MP3 player on a different type of tape. This is a tape that's got sticky shed syndrome on most machines. We'll see how it performs on this. And I think what's so unique about this one is the fact that it runs from right to left. In the early days of reel-to-reel, there was obviously no standards. Although early video cassette recorders, U-matic for example, also ran from right to left. Now of course, as soon as we hit rewind, no such thing as muting on rewind on this thing. And of course I had my levels too high. And that's what happens when you made recordings before we had VU meters, when you're trying to rely on a little light blinking to tell you whether you're overloading your tape or not. It made for some very poor quality home recordings back in the day when you just had to rely on a blinking light. Anyway, we've looked at enough of this thing. This is a piece of reel-to-reel history, which can now go back into my storage unit, never to be seen again. That is, unless somebody wants to buy it. I might actually put this thing up and advertise this unit and just see whether somebody else would like it in their collection. Thanks for watching. We'll catch you in the next one real soon.